Coming up next on the Union Label, we have a conversation with Jerry Sykes of the Western Kentucky Retirees Council of the UAW. Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Let me begin with the same question I ask everyone.
Okay.
What has the union movement meant to you as an individual, and what has the union movement meant to the working class of the United States?
Well, talking about me as an individual and what the union has meant to me and my family, I joined the United Auto Workers in 1964, and from 1964 until the day I retired in 1994, the union wages that I earned and the benefits that I got over all those years, that's how I put clothes on my children's back. I sent them to school on union wages. They were educated with very good education through union wages. We were able to live a middle-class life, as we call it at that time, on union wages. The union has meant just about everything to me when it comes to where I'm at in my life today and how I got to where I am. So I'm very, very proud of the United Auto Workers. But my union goes back beyond that. My mother and father migrated to Detroit or Lansing, Michigan in the late 40s. As I like to say, they were looking for the American dream. And they took my brother and my sister and myself up to Michigan. And more than once I've told my mother before she passed away how much I appreciated the fact that she took me to Michigan. She left her mother and father, her sister and brothers, here in Tennessee at the time. And her and my dad, they migrated to Michigan trying to find a better life for me and my brother and my sister.
And of course, there were thousands of people.
Absolutely.
From Tennessee, from Kentucky, and other southern states that in fact, in my classes, I'll ask my students, do you have kinfolks who went up to work in the plants? And almost all of them do. I had cousins. I mean, everybody did. It was this huge out-migration.
And I don't know if people really understand how that affected families. The stress and the strain that were on these families having to leave here and go north to try to make a living and to send some of their money back that they made every week to their parents or brothers and sisters back here to try to keep them afloat during these hard times. And I can remember when I was a child up there at the age of 10 or 11 years old, I would see these guys that had migrated from the South. They came up there and they lived in boarding houses, and most likely would try to find a boarding house where some of their friends from the same counties or states that they left to come north, and they lived there, and they lived actually what I consider to be a lonely type of life. You know, they went to work every day, they came home at the end of work, and maybe the lady that took care of the boarding house would provide the supper for them and wash their clothes and clean them. Some of these guys didn't even have automobiles to drive around in. They took the public transportation to their jobs. And what were they doing? They were trying to save money to get back to Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, wherever they came from. That's what they were trying to do. They were trying to save up enough money to go back and buy a piece of ground or maybe get into a small business. And it was lonely for them, and I felt that as a kid. I could see it. I could see how lonesome they were because they were away from their families. So I kind of reflect on that a whole lot about how our generations had to sacrifice things like that back in the 50s and the 60s in order to try to at least get a part of the American dream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel about it. When I was 16 years old, the first union that I ever joined, I was an usher at the Michigan Theater in downtown Detroit. And for all of us that lived in Detroit in the 50s and the 60s, you can remember what Detroit, Michigan looked like. We had some of the finest theaters and musical places and history and artifacts in the whole United States. So the first job I got at the age of 16, I got a job as an usher at the Michigan Theater, and you were automatically in the union at the age of 16. And I was kind of surprised that ushers had to be in the union. And I says, well, what is the advantage of being in the union? And they says, well, Jerry, when we have these special shows that come into Michigan, like, you know, once a year, the flower show will come in, the boat show will come in, the auto show will come in. Well, we have the rights to work these shows, and we'll be the ticket takers, we'll be the guides for people to guide them around the auto show and show them the new automobiles. So that was the benefit of being in a union. So after I graduated from high school and went on to the next job I got out of high school, I was in the union. It was the Brotherhood of Electrical Engineers. And so I've been associated with the unions just about all my life. And like I say, I know that I wouldn't be where I'm at in my life today if it was not for the United Auto Workers. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
So when did you join the UAW, and where did you work?
Well, I joined the United Auto Workers on February the 10th, 1964. I worked for Chrysler Corporation in Warren, Michigan. And my first job was on the assembly line. I was putting in instrument panels in pickup trucks. And it didn't take me long to realize that as being a young fella that they hadn't hired a lot of people since the early 50s, I kind of felt like I was in a zoo because all the people were coming to see me working on the line because they hadn't saw a young fella in these plants for 14, 15 years. So I would be doing my job, and I would see people looking at me. You know, it's like, look at that young fellow over there, you know. It's nice to see that they're hiring, you know, so. But also what I learned about my first experience in the UAW was that there were lots of World War II veterans working in those plants. And it didn't take me long to understand exactly what they did in World War II and how much respect they had for America and for the UAW. They built our union, these World War II veterans, and when they came into these plants after fighting the wars in 1942 or 46, whenever the war was over, they started working in these plants, and they formed a union, and the union to them meant just like it did when they were in the service. Your brother was on your right, and your brother was on your left, your sister was also working in the plants, and you had to protect one another and do things as a group. They taught me right away. I wasn't there very long, and the first brother walked up to me and he says, Jerry? I said, yeah. He says, what do you know about a credit union? I said, well, to tell you the truth, I don't know much about a credit union at all. And he said, well, you're going to. I says, I am. He says, yeah, because you're going to join this credit union. He says, all you got to do is fill out this card and tell them how much money you want a week taken out of your check. And he says, before you know it, he says, you'll have money in the credit union, you'll be getting interest on your savings, and you can get some of the cheapest loans available through the credit union. You want to go buy a car, go to the credit union, they'll finance your car for you. So that's how they helped us younger people coming up the ladder there. Guy walked up and he says, what do you know about the UAW? And I said, well, I don't know much about the United Auto Workers. I says, my aunt worked at Cadillacs and she was in the UAW. And he says, well, you're going to? I said, I am. And he says, yeah, because we have union classes. They're down here on Mound Road, and we have those like every other week, and we want you to start coming to the union classes. So I think a lot about these guys today and what they did for our country during the war, but also what they did for us as union brothers and sisters in these plants. Mm-hmm. They weren't about to go fight and win a war and then come back and be suppressed by some style of management in these plants. You know, they earned the right, and they were going to make sure that we had the right. So that's what it means to me when I say UAW. Mm-hmm.
Does the UAW still stress history? Because the UAW has one of the richest histories of any union. It's an old CIO union. You go back to Walter Reuther, right, and all the struggles they had to organize the auto plants. Do they stress that to younger members today?
the foresight that our brothers had, our union leaders, from Walter Reuther to Irving Bluestone to Emil Mazie to Doug Fraser, they all had this vision that we had to teach our younger generations about union. So back in the early 60s, Walter Reuther, along with the other brothers and sisters, decided that we needed to get an educational center. So they took some of our union dues and they went up north to northern Michigan and they purchased about 700 acres of a resort area up there that used to be owned by automotive family in Michigan. And they turned it into what we call the Walter and May Reuther Educational Center. And that opened just after Walter died in a plane crash. Him and his wife and the architect and the pilot died in a plane crash, I believe it was in May of 1970. We opened that Walter Reuther and May Reuther's Educational Center. It's still there today. We still send our union brothers and sisters up there for educational classes. We teach collective bargaining. We teach health and safety. We teach grievance procedures. We have families that bring their families up there, their children, to enjoy it's on a complex called Black Lake. And we have summer schools all around the country during the summer. We have them in Oklahoma City. We have them in Black Lake. We have them in all of our regions. And what we do is we not only have classes there, we also invite retirees to come in and share their history with our younger brothers and sisters to teach them what it was like in, say, the 60s and the 70s.
Are the young members, are they surprised to know that, how tough it was, how difficult it was?
They are somewhat shocked to find out that the company just didn't give all this great benefits and everything that we enjoy today, that we bargained for those. We paid for those. We invested in those, you know, that. So it is a give and take situation. Mm-hmm. It's not like they gave us everything. We paid for it. And for them to think that, well, gee, you know, the company just gave us this raise, or they just gave us this holiday, or they just gave us, no. This was all done through a set of negotiations called collective bargaining. Mm-hmm. And when we say collective bargaining, we bargain for everything. We put everything on the table. Walter Reuther used to say that the companies, when they make their money and they pay their stockholders and they pay their suppliers, then we put the pie on the table and everybody gets a slice of the pie and the worker gets his slice of that pie too. And that's the way we've always looked at it, that the worker should benefit in the profits. And also, when hard times come, we make sacrifices, and we've made numerous sacrifices over the years to keep these companies going, because we knew that if we didn't, we had no future. Mm-hmm. So, but we always said that when they become profitable again, and they can afford to restore the benefits that we have gave up, then we want to get those benefits back for our workers. Mm-hmm. And that's the way we approached mm-hmm. collective bargaining over the years. So.
Did you hold any offices in the union as you came along?
Yes, I got very interested in the UAW, and over the years I've been a vice president of our local, I've been a steward, I've been a blue button steward on the assembly line. I left.
What's a blue button steward?
Well, we have in the Chrysler organization, UAW Chrysler department, and GM and Ford would probably have a little different organizational on union positions. But when you first get started in the union, and if you want to get interested and participate and try to lead in the union, we have like a chief steward of each department. Mm-hmm. And then above him is what we call a committee man. Well, below the chief steward is what you call a blue button steward. In certain situations where the chief steward may be gone on official business or be out of the department doing something, a blue button steward can listen to a worker's problem and relay that problem to the chief steward when he returns. So mm-hmm. that's what they call a blue button steward.
Now, is because you wear a blue button?
Well, they had a little button.
Right.
It said blue button on it. Yeah. So.
What do you think makes a good union steward? Steward is sort of, that's the grassroots. What makes a good union steward, in your opinion?
Well, I think a good union steward is a person that knows the department immediately. He knows the jobs. He knows how they're performed. He knows exactly what the worker has to do to perform the job. He also knows how to communicate with management when there is a problem, not to a level of disgust or where he's just going to kowtow or whatever. You have to have this level playing field between a management and a good union representative to go ahead and resolve those problems. So I think a good union steward is well educated on all the situations, whatever they are. He knows how to handle that particular problem if it arises. So, and we've had good union representations over the years. They have to know how to perform the grievance procedure if it gets to a point where we have to issue a grievance against the company or against an individual. They have to know what the steps are in the grievance procedure and how to move those steps forward to try to resolve the problem. So, but we've had some good union reps over the years. The presidents that I've served under, they've been fantastic. And also, after I retired, our Constitution says that if you have enough UAW retirees that leave the area where they retired from and they congregate, let's say, back to Kentucky or Tennessee, they brought their roots back home. Well, our Constitution says that if you have enough of those retirees that migrate into one area, then we have the right to form a retired workers' council. And it's called, ours is called the Western Kentucky Retired Workers' Council.
And your position there is?
I'm the chairman of that group. Yeah. And what we do is, it doesn't make any difference where you retired from, Chrysler, General Motors, Ford, Independent, doesn't make any difference. As long as you retired out of the UAW and you retired and moved back to your hometown, let's say, or your home state, we still have benefits. And we have to make sure that all of our retirees know what benefits they got coming and how to execute those benefits if they have to. So we found out that when I retired down here in '94, we did an address listing of our retirees in West Tennessee and Western Kentucky, and we found out that we had over 1,250 families that had migrated back from Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, that brought their roots back home. Some second generation. Absolutely. They come back.
Yeah. Oh, I was telling you, we were talking before the program, there was a fellow on the street where I grew up and still live in Mayfield who went up to work in the plants and saved his money and came back and started a dry cleaning business.
Yeah.
And then the time that I went to Detroit, flew up, this fellow was sitting next to me, we struck up a conversation. He had about a week left with Chevrolet, and he was from Marshall County originally and he had come home that weekend to find him a retirement place. So you do come back. Part of this, it must be though, it's social. You get together and you reminisce. Do you do that quite a bit?
Well, what's kind of surprising is that the first meeting that we had, we wanted to find out whether or not we could generate enough interest to form this retiree council. So we sent out postcards to all the retirees in this area and told them we were going to meet at the Curious Center at Murray State on a certain day at a certain time. Well, I was unaware of what was going on other than the fact that I received this postcard. So I went down to Murray State that morning, and I'm telling you, there was a couple of guys standing out in front of the building there, and I got out of my car, and they said, "Did you find a place to park?" And I said, "Well, I was lucky." They said, "We have never saw so many brothers and sisters showing up for this meeting." We had over 600 retirees that came into that area inquiring about this council that we were going to form. So we knew right away that the interest was there to do it. So, and what happened was we brought together brothers and sisters from the same locals that they worked for in Michigan or Indiana or Ohio. "Hey, Bob, how you doing? I didn't know you lived down here." "Well, yeah, I live down on the lake," or "I live down in Murray," or "I live in Mayfield." And we reintroduced brothers and sisters that lost contact with one another when they retired. So yeah, there's a lot of reminiscing going on at our meetings all the time, especially when you get a new member that comes in for the first time, everybody wants to know, where are you from, what local did you work at, and where you living now? And, hey, I know that fella, or I know that lady. You know, I used to work in the same plant she did. So, but time has gone by now. I'm 16 years retired, and a lot of our retirees are even retired longer than I have. So age is catching up in some respects.
How often do you all meet?
We meet the third Thursday of every month. We meet in Benton, Kentucky, up at the community center there. We meet the third Thursday of each month at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I got to say that we only represent the retirees that brought their roots back home, like let's say a local chapter like UAW Chapter 523 out of Calvert City. They have what they call a local chapter, and they represent all the retirees that retired out of the Calvert City plants or any other plant that they represented. So ours is what we call an international area council. Here again, we just represent all the retirees that brought their roots back home. So, and we don't meet in December because we figure brothers and sisters are having company coming in, or they're maybe traveling up north to see their children, or so we don't meet in December. We meet 11 months out of the year. So,
And about how many members do you have in your organization now?
Well, we ran another listing here not too long ago, and I think there was 1,196 families on that list. And out of that total list, we can generate a pretty good turnout of retirees to show up at our meetings or any other function that we want to get involved in. We can muster those people up pretty quickly. You know, so. And if I could say one other thing this morning too. A lot of people that are not associated with unions, the UAW or the United Steelworkers or the machinists, a lot of people are being misled because they're telling people that our union dues are used in politics. And people believe that I have to pay my dues and they're going to take my dues and give it to some politician. And that's a misconception. I want people to understand that union dues, it's a federal law that's been on the books for quite a while, that our union cannot use union dues in political races or anything to do with politics. Our union dues are used to fund our locals, fund our educational system, fund our retiree programs, things like that. Now, when you talk about politics, sure, we're involved in politics. We always have been involved in politics because a certain party understands what the working men and women of this country need, and they help us to try to achieve that. It's called the American dream, as I see it. But the way we take care of our politics is, I'm sure that the machinists and the United Auto Workers and the steel workers, they might have a different name for their program. Our program is called CAP, C-A-P. That's a Community Action Program. That's a voluntary program where we asked our brothers and sisters, would you like to donate in the CAP? Maybe once a year we have a big drive where we sell tickets, and we give away certain prizes if you will buy the CAP tickets. Now that money goes into the CAP fund, and we use that for political things. So there's a big difference in the country today when people think that we have to use our union dues for politics. No, we can't, because the federal government would be in our financial secretary's office immediately saying, I want to see your books, because you cannot use union dues for political functions, and we understand that. So this CAP fund is a voluntary thing. If you want to make a voluntary contribution every month, you can sign a card, send it up to the International, and they will have the company that you retired from hold out a certain amount of money if you want to donate it to CAP. A lot of our brothers and sisters do that. Not all of them, but a majority of them do that, and that's how we fund our political action committees. So I want people to understand that.
That's good.
It's a misconception out there when people say that union dues are used in politics. They're not used in politics.
One of the things, we're almost out of time, you get a big turnout for retirees groups. But oftentimes, I've talked to union officials lots of times, for the monthly union meeting for active workers, you don't get that big a turnout, especially among young people. So I'll ask you the $64 question. How do you get young people enthused and interested in participating in their union locals?
Well, probably the quickest answer to that, in my opinion, is you need more Governor Walkers like you got in Wisconsin, okay? I think the American people, and especially union brothers and sisters, what they saw happen in Wisconsin here in the last 2 or 3 months with this Governor Walker is more of a generating power to bring union brothers and sisters back together than anything in this country. You take these governors now that are in Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and Wisconsin, they're trying to break our unions. And they know if they can break our unions, then the corporations will have the willpower to invest in and to elect any political person they want to. Our unions are the only thing, in my opinion, that's speaking up for America today. We are out there constantly trying to make this a level playing field, not to give the advantage to this side or this side. We want it even so we can, as we say, collectively bargain. So how do we get more brothers and sisters interested in the union? It's a responsibility of a union leader in our organization to convince our younger brothers and sisters to get involved. If you do not get involved today, tomorrow looks awful bleak, especially at this time in our lives. I think it looks very bleak if we don't do something and do it now, and I believe that we are collectively getting involved. So that's how I view that.
We have less than a minute. Any parting words of wisdom here?
Well, I want to thank you very much for inviting me down today to have this discussion. I've enjoyed it, and like I say, I guess the time does fly by when you're engaged in something like this.
Told you it would.
But no, once again, I just want to say that unions is what built the middle class in this country. If we did, unions, they lift the boats in everybody's life. I mean, without union scales and union wages, there would be no middle class. They got this when, like I say, I give a lot of credit to the World War II veterans who really got involved in this when they got out of the services and everything. And without a middle class and without taxpayers, you know, as I say, we have, talking to the young brothers and sisters, you know, we built your roads, we built your hospitals, we built your schools, your educational system, and we've done the best we could do doing it. But now you have to get involved because there are certain elements out there that are trying to destroy everything that we've built. So to maintain the middle class, we got to keep going.
And we're out of time. Thank you for joining us. My guest today was Jerry Sykes of the United Automobile Workers. I'm Barry Craig. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.